After more than 40 years hauling scuba gear through airports and onto dive boats, I can tell you straight up, most divers are using the wrong bag for the job. It's not about buying the most expensive one or the toughest one. It's about matching the tool to what you're actually doing. I'm Ray Hollister, and I've made enough baggage claim mistakes and boat deck blunders to know exactly where each type of bag works and where it fails.
You're listening to the Scuba Gear Lab podcast. Quick heads up before we get going. Everything you hear in this episode, the research, the analysis, the script, that's all human verified and written by real divers who actually use this gear. The voice you're hearing is AI generated, but the content behind it is 100% the real deal. To everyone who's been listening for a while, thank you. Really glad you're here. If you're just finding the show, welcome aboard. We drop new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, covering everything from gear reviews to real-world dive equipment advice. Let's jump in.
The real answer here is this. A dedicated scuba travel bag beats a generic dive gear bag for air travel every time, but mesh dive gear bags are unbeatable for boat-to-shore operations. The question isn't which is better, it's which matches your actual diving scenario. I'm going to break down the scuba travel bag versus dive gear bag debate with real-world performance metrics, durability considerations, and the specific use cases where each excels. Let's start with a quick comparison to set the stage. Scuba travel bags are built for air and vehicle transport, while dive gear bags are designed for boat operations and shore dives. When it comes to materials, travel bags typically use heavy-duty ballistic nylon or PVC-backed polyester, whereas dive gear bags use lighter nylon or coated mesh. Empty weight is a big difference too. Travel bags run anywhere from 3.5 to 6.5 pounds, while dive gear bags are much lighter at 1 to 3.5 pounds. The key distinction: travel bags are reinforced for the abuse checked baggage takes at airlines, while dive gear bags aren't designed for airline handling at all. Travel bags offer limited or no water drainage because they're meant for dry storage, but dive gear bags drain rapidly thanks to mesh construction. Protection level is another major split. Travel bags have padded walls and sometimes rigid inserts, while dive gear bags offer minimal padding and are really just abrasion resistant. Price-wise, you're looking at around $120 to $350 for travel bags and $35 to $120 for dive gear bags. Now, let's talk about material construction and durability. Here's the thing about bag materials. They either survive saltwater and baggage handlers or they don't. I've watched $40 duffel bags disintegrate after 3 dive trips because the zippers couldn't handle 70 pounds of wet gear, and the fabric turned to tissue paper once salt crystals started working into the fibers. Scuba travel bags use heavy-duty ballistic nylon in the 1200 to 1680 denier range, often with PVC or TPU backing for structural integrity. The reinforced stitching at stress points, usually bar-tacked with marine-grade thread, makes the difference between a bag that lasts 5 seasons and one that splits open on the baggage carousel in Cozumel. I've seen Akona and Stahlsack bags with 1680 denier construction take a beating for over a decade. The wheels are typically inline skate grade with sealed bearings, rated for 100+ pounds. Cheap wheels fail first. Trust me, I've dragged too many broken bags across parking lots. Dive gear bags prioritize drainage over protection. Most use coated mesh, the kind that doesn't snag on bolt snaps, or perforated nylon with drainage grommets every 6 to 8 inches. The mesh weave, usually 1200 denier polyester, resists abrasion from deck cleats and tank valves, but offers zero padding. That's intentional. After a dive, you dump wet gear in, rinse it, and let water pour out. In Florida summers, I've seen solid fabric bags turn into mildew factories in 48 hours. Mesh bags breathe. The failure mode difference is critical. Travel bags fail at zippers and wheels under repeated airline abuse. Dive gear bags fail at seams and handle attachment points when overloaded. I tell people to check the stitching pattern. Anything less than triple-stitched stress points with reinforcement webbing won't survive 50 pounds of gear swinging from one hand. For context, selecting proper gear transport matters as much as choosing the right BCD for your dive profile. Mismatched equipment creates problems before you hit the water. Moving on to weight capacity and load distribution. I've watched divers try to cram a full regulator setup, BCD, wetsuit, fins, and mask into a bag rated for 40 pounds. The bag doesn't explode, it just redistributes weight onto the weakest stress point, usually the shoulder strap anchor. Then you're carrying 60 pounds with one hand because the strap tore off. Scuba travel bags are engineered for 70 to 100 pounds of gear with reinforced bottom panels, often rigid plastic inserts or thick PVC to prevent sagging. The better models use padded backpack straps with sternum and waist clips, distributing load across your torso instead of destroying one shoulder. Wheels and a telescoping handle are standard. I don't care how tough you are, pulling 80 pounds of gear through an airport without wheels is stupid and unnecessary. The internal volume typically runs 120 to 150 liters, with compression straps to stabilize shifting loads during transport. Weight distribution matters most when you're moving fast. I've had to sprint across terminals to make connections, and a poorly balanced bag will throw you off stride or slam into your legs with every step. Load-bearing points should be reinforced with box stitch patterns and backed with webbing. Anything less starts tearing under dynamic loads. Dive gear bags max out around 40 to 60 pounds before the handles become torture devices. They're designed for short-distance carries, boat deck to bench, shore to parking lot. The mesh construction can't support the rigid frame needed for wheeled systems. Most use dual padded handles, one on each end for two-handed carries. I prefer this for wet gear. You can swing it to drain water, and the handles dry fast.
But here's what nobody mentions in product descriptions. Mesh bags sag. Load 50 pounds of wet gear into a mesh bag and it'll conform to whatever you set it on, which means your regulator first stage might end up wedged under a tank boot. Travel bags hold their shape. Let's get into protection features and gear segregation. The first time I flew with a $2,000 camera housing in a generic bag, I learned an expensive lesson about the difference between fits inside and actually protected. Baggage handlers don't care that your regulator is life support equipment. They'll toss your bag the same way they toss everyone else's. Dive gear bags include padded dividers, usually removable, to separate regulators, computers, and cameras from hard-edged items like fins and weights. The sidewalls have 10 to 15 millimeter foam padding, sometimes more around the top and bottom. I've seen bags with dedicated rigid compartments for computers and electronics. Worth the extra cost if you travel with a Shearwater or Suunto dive computer. The better bags include waterproof internal pockets, welded seam construction, not just zippers, for documents, phones, and anything that absolutely cannot get wet. I keep my logbook and certification cards in these. External pockets with drainage holes work for wet items like boots and gloves. Dive gear bags offer minimal protection. They're not designed for it. The mesh provides abrasion resistance, but zero impact protection. If you drop a tank on your gear, the mesh won't stop it. Some models include a single zippered pocket, usually waterproof, for small items, but most are just open bags. That simplicity is the point. Dump everything in, rinse, done. I use travel bags for transport and dive gear bags for daily boat operations. Each does its job. Trying to make one bag do both means compromising protection or drainage, and in my experience, those compromises lead to damaged gear or mildew problems. For photographers, this matters even more. An underwater camera housing needs serious protection during transport. I wouldn't trust that in a mesh bag, period. Now, let's talk about airline compliance and travel logistics. Every airline has different rules, and they change them whenever it suits their revenue models. But the physics don't change. Bags designed for airline travel survive. Bags that aren't designed for it fall apart. I've flown with dive gear to the Caribbean, Indonesia, Red Sea, and Pacific Islands. The bag itself is part of your gear list.
Scuba travel bags are built to airline linear dimension limits. That's 62 linear inches for most carriers, which is length plus width plus height. Most measure around 32 by 16 by 14 inches, fitting under the 62-inch rule while maximizing internal volume. The reinforced construction handles the drop and throw treatment better than soft duffels. I've had bags fall off baggage carts, get stacked under 6 other bags, and arrive intact. The zippers are heavy-duty number 10 coil or metal tooth variants with lockable dual pulls, essential for TSA-friendly security. Weight matters for airline fees. Empty, a quality travel bag weighs 4 to 6 pounds. You're typically limited to 50 pounds for standard checked bags, 70 pounds on some international routes. That means you have 44 to 46 pounds for gear. A lightweight travel BCD and compact regulator setup help maximize that budget. Dive gear bags aren't airline compatible. The mesh tears when conveyor belts snag it. The lack of structure means they get crushed under heavier bags, and most don't have reinforced handle systems for repeated lifting. I've seen mesh bags with shoulder straps literally rip off when a baggage handler grabbed them wrong. These are boat bags, not airplane bags. For dive travel logistics, I use both. Travel bag for flight transport, mesh dive gear bag packed inside for daily dive operations. On site, I transfer gear to the mesh bag for boat dives, then repack into the travel bag for the return flight. It's an extra step, but it saved my gear more times than I can count. So who should choose a scuba travel bag? If you're flying to dive destinations even once a year, get a proper scuba travel bag. Period. I've seen too many divers show up to tropical resorts with ruined gear because they tried to save $100 on a bag. The cost of replacing a regulator second stage or BCD inflator far exceeds the price of a decent travel bag. You need a scuba travel bag if you fly to dive destinations more than once every 2 years, if you travel with camera equipment or other high-value electronics, if you dive in remote locations where gear replacement isn't an option, if you're over the age or fitness level where dragging 70 pounds without wheels makes sense, and that's most of us, or if you want your gear to arrive in the same condition it left. The investment range is around $120 to $350, with the sweet spot around $220 to $240 for bags that'll last 8 to 10 years of regular travel. Who should choose a dive gear bag? If you're doing local diving, truck or car transport, shore dives, boat charters from your home port, a dive gear bag makes more sense for daily operations. They're lighter, drain faster, and cost less to replace when they wear out.
You need a dive gear bag if you drive to dive sites with no airline handling, if you dive frequently enough that wet gear needs to dry between trips, if you want a lightweight bag for carrying to shore entry points, if you're on a boat-based dive trip and need something that drains instantly, or if budget is tight and you don't fly with gear. Expect to pay around $35 to $120 for a quality mesh dive gear bag. I replace mine every 3 to 4 years because UV exposure and salt water eventually degrade the mesh, but that's normal wear for equipment that lives in harsh conditions. Best mesh dive bags specifically designed for quick drainage start around $45 and scale up with features like padded handles and reinforced bottoms. The practical approach, if you travel by air even occasionally, buy the travel bag first and add a mesh bag later. You can always use the travel bag for vehicle transport, but you can't use a mesh bag on airplanes. Let's cover some frequently asked questions. Can I use a scuba travel bag for daily boat diving? You can, but it's not ideal because most scuba travel bags don't drain water effectively. They're designed to keep gear dry during transport, not to handle soaking wet equipment after dives. I've seen divers use travel bags on boats and end up with standing water in the bottom that sloshes around and creates a mildew problem by day 3. If you're on a live aboard or doing repetitive boat dives, transfer your gear to a mesh dive bag that drains instantly and lets everything air out between dives. What size scuba travel bag do I need for a full gear set? For a complete rig, including BCD, regulator, wetsuit, fins, mask, and accessories, you need a minimum 120-liter capacity travel bag, which translates to roughly 32 to 34 inches in length. I run a 145-liter bag because I carry camera strobes and housings, and it gives me room for packing clothes around gear for extra cushioning on flights. Just keep the total weight under 50 pounds to avoid airline overweight fees.
Are scuba travel bags waterproof? No, most scuba travel bags are water-resistant but not waterproof. They'll handle rain and splash, but aren't designed to be submerged or keep gear dry in a downpour. The zippers and seams aren't sealed the way dry bags are. If you need waterproof storage during transport, use dry bags inside the travel bag for electronics and items that can't get wet, which is what I do for my dive computer and camera equipment when traveling through wet climates.
Here's the bottom line. The scuba travel bag versus dive gear bag comparison isn't about picking a winner. It's about matching the tool to the job. I own both, and I use both, because each solves a specific problem. For airline travel and protecting expensive gear during transport, nothing beats a properly built scuba travel bag with reinforced construction, wheels, and padded compartments. For daily dive operations, boat diving, and shore entries, where wet gear needs to drain and breathe, mesh dive gear bags are the only sensible choice. Most divers who travel even occasionally should invest in a quality scuba travel bag first. It'll pay for itself the first time it prevents a damaged regulator or cracked computer housing. Add a mesh dive gear bag for on-site operations, and you've got the complete transport solution for any diving scenario, from tropical liveaboards to cold water local charters. After 4 decades of dragging gear through airports and onto boats, that's the setup I trust, and it's what I recommend to anyone who asks.
That's it for this episode of the Scuba Gear Lab podcast. Thanks for listening. New episodes go out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so there's always something fresh coming your way. If you got value out of this one, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a 5-star rating and a quick review. It genuinely helps other divers find the show when they're searching for solid gear advice. And make sure you hit subscribe or follow so you get notified the second a new episode drops. See you next time.